On a rain-soaked night, a billionaire found a 6-year-old girl trembling behind a dumpster. Her wrist burned with a cross, and her eyes too old for her age. Saving her would expose a holy empire built on stolen children and force him to choose between redemption and ruin beneath a storm of faith and fire. Rain clung to the broken statues outside St. Camille Church, silver threads dripping down stone halos. The storm had chewed through the bayou for 3 days straight, and the air still smelled of wet iron and smoke. Inside, candles flickered on soaked pews while volunteers hauled crates of bottled water across the aisle. Samuel Archer, 41, founder of Archer Renewables, wasn't supposed to be here. Billionaires didn't unload rice sacks or sweep mud from marble floors. But the storm had taken out half the grid his company built, and guilt had dragged him back to Louisiana, the home he'd left behind, and pretended didn't rot under its own rain. A faint noise stopped him mid-stride. Not thunder, a whisper. He followed it past the altar down the stairwell where puddles shimmered with candlelight. The basement smelled of mildew and incense long dead. "Hello," his voice echoed. Then another sound, the tremor of a breath too light to be grown. Behind a stack of relief boxes he saw movement. A small figure crouched in the corner wrapped in a tattered quilt. A little girl 8 at most. Hair plastered to her cheeks, eyes wide but dry. She clutched a doll with one arm and her wrist with the other. Sam knelt slow enough not to startle her. "It's okay, sweetheart," the girl whispered without looking up. "Please don't tell him I'm here." Lightning flashed through the cracks of the stairwell window enough to show the burned cross seared into her skin. For the first time that night, the rain outside sounded like screaming. The candle beside them hissed, melting into the cracks of the floor. Sam stayed crouched, afraid even his breath might scare her away. "What's your name, sweetheart?" No answer. Only the rain. Then barely a whisper, "Aria." Her lips trembled. The doll she clutched was missing an eye stuffed with wet paper. Around her wrist, the burned cross glistened red beneath grime. Sam's stomach turned. "Who did this to you?" he asked quietly. Arya's gaze drifted to the ceiling as if searching through ghosts. He said, "It keeps monsters away. The mark means I'm safe now." Sam's throat tightened. Who said that? The pastor. The word hit like lightning. He slipped off his cobalt jacket, the same kind he wore on every stage, every press photo, and wrapped it around her thin shoulders. The fabric swallowed her whole. For a second she froze, afraid warmth was a trick. Then her small fingers clenched the sleeve, holding it like armor. "You'll get in trouble," she whispered. "For what? For helping me. He says kindness makes people weak." Outside, thunder rumbled again, echoing through the church halls like distant drums. Sam rose slowly, lifting her into his arms. She weighed almost nothing, just rain and fear. As he climbed the stone steps, her voice brushed against his ear. "Please don't tell Pastor Gideon I'm here." The name chilled him. Gideon Lyle, the face of Helios Relief, the charity that had been praising him all week for his donations. At the top of the stairs, lightning lit the stained glass saints in violent color. For a fleeting second, it looked like the angels were turning away. The kitchen of St. Camille glowed with a faint orange hum from a single gas lamp. Rain still drummed on the roof above, steady as a heartbeat. Sam placed Arya on a wooden bench near the stove. Her small fingers clutched the edge like a sailor afraid of falling off the world. He ladled soup into a chipped bowl, chicken and rice, the last pot still warm from the volunteers' shift. When he set it in front of her, Arya didn't move. She just stared at the steam curling upward, wide-eyed and waiting. "You can eat," Sam said softly. Her lips barely moved. "Do I have to say thank you first?" He blinked. "If you want to." She whispered the words to the spoon itself. "Thank you." Then flinched, as if expecting punishment. Sam's chest burned. "You don't have to ask permission to eat here, Arya." She looked up, confusion flickering through exhaustion. "Pastor says I eat only if I earn it." He slid the bowl closer. "Then tonight, You earned it by surviving." For a moment, the only sound was the soft clink of her spoon against porcelain. She ate fast, trembling between hunger and guilt, glancing toward the door each time thunder rolled. Sam watched the way the flame played on her damp hair, turning it from ash to gold. The world above might have forgotten her, but here in this small kitchen something shifted, a promise forming in the quiet. Outside, church bells rang faintly through the storm, their echo warped by wind. Arya froze mid-bite. "He's coming," she whispered. Sam turned toward the door. "Who?" Her voice cracked like glass. "Pastor Gideon." Sam laid his phone on the counter, the cracked screen glowing against the damp wood. Outside, rain licked the stained glass, thunder rolling like judgment. Arya sat curled in his coat, asleep at last, her breath soft and uneven. He opened the Helios Relief donor portal, the one he'd wired $1 million to last month. Rows of transactions scrolled under his thumb, but something caught his eye. Each entry labeled Micro Shelter Initiative was tagged with coordinates deep bayou sectors long abandoned since the floods. He zoomed in on one unit, number 47, active. A live location blinked red just miles from the church. A faint voice made him look up. "You shouldn't be down here this late, Mr. Archer." Deacon Raymond, an old man with a limp and kind eyes, stood in the doorway holding a candle. Its flame trembled with every gust. Sam straightened. "Just checking the donation logs. The shelters, do you know them?" The deacon's smile faded. "Helios keeps its records locked in grace. We don't ask questions we can't pray away." "Children live in those shelters," Sam pressed. "Children disappear in those storms, son. Whether they find shelter or shadow, only God and Helios know." The words hung heavy, thick as the damp air. Sam looked back at the screen. Rainwater had seeped into the cracks, blurring numbers like tears. "Who runs Helios in this parish?" he asked. The deacon's candlelight faltered. "Pastor Gideon himself. But careful, Mr. Archer. Men who sell mercy don't like it," returned. Lightning flashed, turning the brass crucifix into a weapon of light. Sam closed the laptop, pulse pounding. He glanced toward the kitchen bench. Arya stirred, whispering in her sleep. "Please don't lock me in the dark again." He whispered back, mostly to himself. "Not while I'm breathing." And in that silent vow, the storm outside seemed to answer a warning or perhaps an oath. The storm had eased to a low growl, but the church walls still wept rain. Candles burned low, throwing shaky halos across the pews. Sam sat on the floor beside Arya's bench, his back against cold stone laptop still warm in his lap. A soft whimper made him look up. Arya's body jerked, her small hands clawing at the air. "Stop. I'll be quiet. I'll be quiet." He rushed to her side. "Arya, hey, wake up, sweetheart. It's just a dream." She jolted upright, gasping, eyes wide and lost. "He said if I talk, God won't hear me." Her voice cracked raw from swallowed screams. Sam froze. Something inside him twisted a memory too close, a belt, a bottle, a voice saying, "Be quiet, or you'll wake the neighbors." He drew a slow breath, steadying both of them. "Who said that?" he asked gently. "Pastor Gideon," she whispered, trembling. "He said bad kids keep storms away." Sam took her hand. It felt like holding a bird. "You're not bad, Arya. You just survived someone else's sin." Her tears slipped quietly, but she didn't pull away. He began humming without thinking an old hymn his mother used to sing when the roof leaked and the lights went out. Arya's shaking slowed. The melody filled the hollow space between thunder and faith. When she finally fell asleep again, her fingers still clutched the hem of his jacket. Sam leaned back, eyes on the crucifix above. For the first time in years, he whispered a prayer, not for profit, but for peace. The next afternoon, sunlight finally clawed its way through the clouds, turning the soaked city gold for the first time in days. Outside St. Camille, a stage had been hastily built for a Helios Relief press conference, rows of microphones, banners reading "Rebuilding with Faith." Reporters shuffled through mud, adjusting tripods, waiting for the star of the show. Pastor Gideon Lyle arrived like he owned the weather. Tall silver hair, slicked back linen suit, spotless despite the muck. His smile could have sold forgiveness by the pound. The cameras loved him. The crowd leaned closer as he lifted his arms. "My brothers and sisters," he began, voice smooth as syrup, "our trials are but God's way of polishing our souls." Applause. Sam stood off stage, still in mud-stained jeans, arms crossed. Every word scraped against his patience. When the speech ended, reporters surged forward. Sam stepped in, calm but cutting. "Pastor Lyle, could I ask about the micro-shelter initiative, the one Helios funds in the bayou?" Gideon's smile flickered, then reset. A humble effort to house those forgotten by man, but remembered by heaven. Sam didn't blink. "And the children listed under those shelters? Why are their guardians retracted in the records?" The cameras shifted toward them. A few reporters raised brows. Gideon lowered his voice just for Sam. "You shouldn't dig, Mr. Archer. Mud takes everyone who stirs it." Sam's jaw tightened. "I build clean energy grids, Pastor. I deal in mud every day." For the first time, the pastor's charm cracked. "Faith isn't a system you can audit." "Neither is abuse," Sam answered. Silence fell. The wind tugged at the banners, making them snap like whips. Then Gideon's smile returned, hollow plastic. He patted Sam's shoulder for the cameras. "Let's not confuse mercy with meddling, my son." Sam stepped back, letting the cameras capture that frozen handshake, the preacher glowing like a saint, the billionaire staring through him like a ghost. As Gideon turned to greet another reporter, Sam caught the reflection in a puddle near the podium. The man's shoes were spotless, but the water beneath him ran red with mud. It looked too much like blood. The office lights hummed low as Riley Tran, Sam's COO, pulled up the Helios Relief Logistics page. Her fingers moved fast, tracing shipments that shouldn't exist. Supplies marked non-perishable routed to abandoned bayou grids. Sam leaned against the desk, sleeves rolled up, still smelling faintly of storm and candle smoke. "Tell me what I'm looking at." Riley enlarged a map. Red dots bloomed across the wetlands like a rash. "Every micro-shelter Helios funded has the same pattern. No utility draw, no maintenance logs. But look here," she clicked another tab, "return manifests. They're sending empty containers back to Helios." "Back, yeah. After every flood shipment. There's movement at night, no driver IDs logged. Almost like they're hiding traffic," Sam finished. The air between them thickened. Riley's screen flickered as a live GPS feed popped up from one of the red zones. "This unit's pinging right now. Warehouse address south of the bayou, same coordinates on your donor portal." Sam stared at the pulsing signal. It beat like a heart. "How secure is this trace?" he asked. "Corporate network secure. But if Helios sees the access, they'll know it came from us." He turned away, rubbing his temple. "Then route it through Archer Renewables' drone channel. If they audit, it'll look like a routine weather check." Riley hesitated. "You're crossing lines, Sam." He looked at her, tired, resolved. "Lines were crossed the moment a child ended up branded behind my church." She said nothing more. Only the clicking of keys filled the room, punctuated by the distant groan of thunder rolling back from the bayou. On screen, a file name appeared briefly before encrypting itself again. "Project Mercy. Guardian approval required." Riley frowned. "They wiped it as soon as I opened it." Sam's reflection glowed in the screen beside hers. "Then we find a way to open it louder." Outside, lightning struck somewhere deep in the wetlands. And in that white flash, both of them knew they weren't tracing data anymore. They were tracing ghosts. By midnight, the rain had thinned to mist, clinging like breath over the Louisiana bayou. Sam steered a small pirogue through the reeds, the electric motor humming low. Beside him, Riley held a tablet sealed in plastic, its blue light slicing through fog. "There," she whispered, pointing toward a faint glow through the cypress trees. A shack stood on stilts, leaning like it was tired of being alive. A generator rattled beside it, coughing smoke into the wet air. They grounded the boat quietly. Sam's boots sank into mud-cold water, soaking his jeans. Every insect in the swamp seemed to pause as he climbed the rotted steps. The door hung half open. Inside, the air was thick with diesel and bleach. Shelves lined the walls, plastic bins labeled relief supplies, each filled with blankets, canned food, and restraints. Riley's voice trembled. God, Sam, these are child-sized. On one cot, a small metal cuff was still bolted to the frame, its leather strap wet and frayed. A strand of golden hair clung to it. Sam's jaw locked. He grabbed a clipboard nailed to the post. The paper was swollen from humidity, but the handwriting still showed Unit 47, redeemed, Overseer G. Lyle. Riley covered her mouth. Redeemed. He tore the page free, stuffing it into his jacket. Then an engine roared outside. The shack trembled. Through the cracks, headlights swept the Reed's fan boats, two of them approaching fast. Riley hissed. They're scanning. Sam doused the lamp and pulled her toward the back door. They splashed into knee-deep water as the generator choked and died behind them. A voice shouted from the first boat. Check the hut. He wants the files tonight. Sam froze in the dark, holding Riley's wrist as beams of light crossed the trees. When the fan boats veered toward another inlet, he exhaled sharply. The swamp swallowed the sound. He whispered, Now we know what Helios shelters. Riley looked back once. The shack's door swung open in the wind, creaking like a confession. Morning crept in gray and heavy, soaking the stained glass in dull light. The storm had passed, but the church still smelled of rain and fear. Sam returned before dawn, mud dried on his boots. The file from the shack pressed against his chest, like evidence that could burn. Arya sat on the floor near the altar, a sheet of paper spread before her. Crayons scattered around like tiny wounds of color. What are you drawing, sweetheart? Sam asked, crouching beside her. A map, she said softly, so I don't get lost again. Her small hands moved with surprising precision, blue for water, brown for trees, red for places she said hurt. She pointed with her crayon. Here's the crooked cypress. That's where the loud men shout. And here she drew a circle, the humming tower. It sings at night. Sam's pulse quickened. The tower, does it have a bell? Arya nodded. No church, just a bell on top of a shed. Pastor says it calls angels. He leaned closer, recognizing the rough outline of the bayou grid. Every mark matched a coordinate from Helios's files. Arya, how do you remember all this? She shrugged, tracing the last line. I had to. He said if I forget, I go back in the dark. The paper trembled in her small hands. Sam took it gently, folding it like something holy. You don't have to go back anywhere, he said quietly. Arya looked up, her blue eyes tired but certain. Then promise you'll stop the bad angels. Sam hesitated only a moment. I promise. Outside, thunder rumbled faintly in the distance again. Or maybe it was something else waking in the bayou. The bayou looked different at night, less like a swamp, more like a throat that swallowed sound. The moon hung low, its reflection broken by ripples of oily water. Sam's pirogue glided silently beneath a crooked bridge, the same one Arya had drawn in red crayon. Riley sat in the back, eyes fixed on the tablet. Signals close. Unit 47 again, same frequency as last night. But it's moving. Sam's jaw clenched. Then so are we. The water shifted around them, reeds brushing like whispers. Somewhere in the distance, an engine coughed to life. Then another. Riley froze. Fan boats. Headlights burst through the mist, slicing the dark open. Two, no, three of them moving fast, cutting a V across the black water. Sam slammed the throttle. The pirogue surged forward, skimming the surface. Behind them, floodlights flared, illuminating the bridge in a sickly yellow haze. Bullets hissed into the water. Get down, Riley yelled, ducking behind the crate. Sam swerved hard. The small boat nearly tipped, waves slapping its sides. "You said this was a trace, not a trap? They must have tracked the signal," she shouted back, tapping frantically on the screen. "It's bouncing from tower to tower. Someone's rerouting us toward them." The first fan boat closed in, its motor screaming. A flare exploded overhead, lighting the cypress trees in blood red. Sam's eyes darted to a rusted pipeline arching above the marsh. He gritted his teeth. "Hold tight." He aimed straight for the pipeline supports. The boat shot under as the first fan boat followed too close. Sam kicked the rudder hard. The wake slammed into the pilings, flipping the pursuer sideways. Metal shrieked, water roared, and the fan boat capsized with a splash that echoed across the swamp. Riley looked back. "One down, not enough," Sam growled. The second fan boat fired a harpoon tether that snagged their stern. Sparks snapped across the rope. Sam reached for the EMP puck clipped to his belt, one of Archer Renewables' prototypes. He pressed the trigger. A pulse of blue light spread across the water like lightning under the surface. Engines died mid-howl. The tether went slack. For a moment, silence returned. Only the frogs dared to breathe. Then came a voice, faint, amplified by a megaphone from the last fan boat. "Samuel Archer. The Lord doesn't like thieves." Sam turned, heart pounding. Through the fog stood Pastor Gideon, his silhouette framed by headlights, white suit glowing ghost-like in the rain. Riley whispered, "He's here." Sam didn't answer. He simply looked at Gideon and shouted across the water, "You call this faith? You're trafficking children." Gideon's laughter floated eerily over the swamp. "No, my son. I'm saving them from men who think they can play God." The fan boat turned away, disappearing into fog, leaving only ripples and the smell of gasoline. Sam stood motionless, soaked and shaking, staring after him. Riley broke the silence. "He wanted us to find him. Or to find what comes next." Sam's voice was low. "Then we'll give him exactly that." Above them, lightning spidered through the clouds, illuminating the wooden cross nailed to the bridge's railing, weathered bleeding rust into the rain. The swamp had gone quiet again, but it wasn't peace. It was the sound of a war beginning. Helios headquarters slept behind marble walls and gold scripture. Midnight turned the lobby glass into mirrors, holy words etched in silver, reflecting nothing but rain. Sam's ID still worked. No one questioned the billionaire who paid for miracles. He and Riley slipped through the side entrance. Their footsteps echoed on polished tile, too clean for what they were about to find. "Security's light," Riley whispered, scanning ahead. "Looks like everyone's home watching the press rerun." "Perfect," Sam murmured. "Let's find the sanctum." The corridor opened into a room lined with crosses made of polished steel. At its center stood a vault disguised as an altar. The air smelled of incense and ozone. Riley frowned. "That's not a vault code, it's biometric." Sam pressed his thumb to the panel. It blinked green. "Access granted." Inside drawers gleamed under pale light. Instead of relics, they held flash drives and SD cards labeled with CPS case numbers, each stamped closed for faith reasons. Riley's voice shook. "They've been filing custody retractions through their charity accounts." Sam picked up one folder, edges damp from humidity. On the first page, "Case on A479, Aria Dupree, Guardian Approval G. Lyle." He stared until the words blurred. He signed as her guardian. A hum filled the room, low, mechanical. The lights flickered. Riley turned sharply. "Motion sensor. We've got 30 seconds. Sam pocketed the SD card and the file. "Then we're done here." They backed toward the exit, but the door slid shut behind them. The sanctuary lights turned crimson. A voice crackled from the intercom, smooth and unhurried. Breaking into God's house, Samuel Gideon's tone, calm as ever. Sam glanced up at the glowing cross above the vault, its LEDs bleeding red. He whispered, "Then maybe it's time to burn it down." The alarm screamed. They ran. Outside, rain poured again, cleansing nothing, only spreading the stain. By dawn, the cathedral hall of Helios was reborn for spectacle. Golden drapes masked the cracks. Cameras lined the pews, and a sea of donors filled the front rows, men and women dressed in virtue and perfume. A banner above the altar read, "Faith is the flame that purifies." At the center, Pastor Gideon Lyle raised his arms over a crystal baptismal font, filled with water that shimmered under spotlights. Brothers and sisters, he boomed, voice amplified through speakers that carried like thunder, "Our city trembles with sin, but tonight we wash it clean." Applause rippled like static. Outside, beyond the carved doors, Sam Archer stood in the rain with his hood up holding a small transmitter. The SD card from the sanctum burned in his pocket. He'd uploaded the files, every CPS case, every falsified adoption, every name. Riley's voice hissed through the earpiece. "Live streams armed, all networks open." Sam exhaled. "Then let's baptize some truth." He pushed through the side door. Inside, the crowd gasped. Cameras swiveled to catch the soaked billionaire walking down the aisle like a shadow through gold light. Gideon's smile faltered, but recovered quickly. "Samuel," he said, spreading his arms. "What a blessing to see you here to repent." Sam's voice echoed through the marble. "I didn't come to repent. I came to return what you called salvation." He pulled a remote from his pocket and pressed play. The cathedral's massive LED screens flickered images bursting to life, the shack in the reeds, the child-sized restraints, the case files stamped, "Closed for faith." Gasps broke through the congregation. A woman dropped her rosary. A man stumbled back from the screen as if it burned him. Gideon's mask slipped. "Turn that off," he shouted. But his voice cracked, not with command, but fear. Sam's tone stayed level. "These are your shelters, Pastor. Your kingdom of mud and mercy." Security guards moved toward him. Riley's voice came again. "Their pulling power 30 seconds. Sam stepped closer to the altar. "You branded a child and called it holy. You took what was broken and sold it as redemption." Gideon lunged for the microphone, but Sam slammed it back down on the podium, feedback screaming through the hall. "People of Helios," Sam said, his voice rising above the chaos. "This is what your faith funded." The crowd erupted, shouts, confusion, cell phones flashing. Gideon grabbed a candle from the altar and hurled it toward Sam. Wax splattered across the marble, flame crawling across the drapes. Blasphemer, Gideon roared. "You play with fire, Archer, you'll drown in it!" The flames leapt, devouring silk and light. Smoke coiled toward the rafters like black incense. Sam backed away as fire alarms shrieked. Riley's voice cut through static. "Streams viral, 10,000 viewers, no more." Sam looked at Gideon one last time. The pastor stood before the burning altar, eyes wild light dancing on his perfect teeth. "You can't stop me," Gideon hissed. "Faith forgives everything." Sam's voice was calm. Not anymore. Sprinklers burst open overhead, drenching the hall. Holy water hissed as it met the fire. The cross above the altar shorted out sparks, raining like divine judgment. When the cameras finally died, the last image broadcast to millions was Gideon Lyle's face painted in flame and disbelief, his empire collapsing behind him. Outside, Sam stumbled into the rain, coughing, soaked in smoke and ash. Riley met him halfway. "You did it," she breathed. "No," Sam rasped, watching firelight spill through the stained glass. "Not yet. He still has the children." And as thunder rolled again, the city finally saw the storm for what it was, not weather, but wrath. Sirens screamed through the French Quarter as Helios burned. The fire cast ghostlight across the flooded streets, turning puddles into shards of gold. Sam sprinted through them, lungs raw, jacket clinging to his skin. Every step echoed one name in his head: Aria. He burst into St. Camille Church. The pews were overturned, candles drowned in water. "Aria," he shouted, his voice bouncing off the cracked dome. No answer, only the faint clang of metal below. He took the stairs 2 at a time, boots slamming against stone. The crypt smelled of salt and fear. His flashlight caught something caught on a rusted gate, a blue ribbon frayed and soaked. Arya's. She was here, he muttered. Then from the drainage tunnel beyond the gate came a whimper. Mr. Sam. He squeezed through the bars, cutting his shoulder on rust. The tunnel water reached his knees, icy and fast. Arya crouched against the wall, clutching her doll, her eyes huge in the dark. He waded to her. It's okay. I've got you. But as he lifted her, a roar thundered behind them, fanboat engines closing fast through the canal. Headlights split the darkness. Voices shouted, "He's got the girl, block the outlet." Sam hoisted Arya higher and pointed to a side ladder. Climb, don't look back. She obeyed, shaking but silent, small hands gripping the wet rungs. A flashlight beam swept across his face. Gunshots cracked, ricocheting off concrete. He ducked, pulling his flare pistol from his belt, aimed into the tunnel, and fired. The flare exploded against the ceiling, showering sparks and smoke. The water glowed red, blinding the pursuers for a heartbeat. Sam grabbed Arya, forcing the grate open with his shoulder. They tumbled out onto the flooded alley where Riley waited beside an airboat motor, whining. "Go," Sam shouted. Riley yanked the throttle and the craft lunged into the storm. Behind them, the tunnel burst with light men shouting, fanboats turning in pursuit. Arya clung to Sam's chest, whispering through the rain, "You came back." He looked down, voice breaking. "Always." The airboat vanished into the mist, the city's fire reflecting off the water like a burning cross. The storm had chased them all the way to Jefferson Parish Courthouse, a building that smelled of paper and rain. The clock read 2:17 a.m. Fluorescent lights flickered, casting pale halos over stacks of files. Assistant District Attorney Noreen Baptiste, her hair tied in a fraying bun, stared at Sam and Riley across the cluttered table. "You're telling me a church-funded relief group is running child trafficking routes through the bayou?" Sam slid the soaked folder across, not telling showing. She flipped it open. Photos of shack restraints, Helios invoices, GPS logs. When she reached Arya's burned wrist in the evidence photo, her hand trembled. "Dear God." Riley leaned forward. "We have one shot before they vanish. We need a warrant tonight, sealed, no leaks." Noreen exhaled the sound halfway between disbelief and resolve. "If I file this now, I'm staking my badge and my soul." "Then let's make it count," Sam said quietly. The ADA studied him, this billionaire in a mud-stained coat, eyes hollow but alive. "You've got evidence, witnesses, and one hell of a story. But you don't have jurisdiction in half those parishes." "Then deputize me for one night," Sam answered. "I'll bring proof they can't bury." Noreen hesitated, then pulled a single sheet from her drawer. Her pen scratched like thunder. "Search warrant, emergency execution. Effective until sunrise." She stamped it with a trembling hand. "God help you," she murmured. Riley opened her laptop, the glow reflecting in her wet eyes. "I'll dispatch the drone swarm. Each will tag a vessel with infrared beacons and mirror every signal to your server." Sam nodded. "No more hiding in grace." Noreen handed him the signed paper. "You'll need it." He took it carefully, like a weapon forged from truth. Outside, the rain started again, drumming against the courthouse windows. Riley looked up. "Feels like the bayou's warning us." Sam slipped the warrant inside his coat. "No," he said, stepping into the storm. "It's clearing the way." The wind farm loomed like a field of spinning giants, turbines stretching into the fog, their blades slicing the storm into thunder. Below them, the bayou churned black, scattered with barges and floodlights, the Helios transfer hub. Riley's voice crackled in Sam's earpiece. "All drones online. Infrared tags locked. We've got at least 20 kids inside the main hangar." Sam crouched behind a rusted pipe rain, whipping across his face. "What about Gideon? Thermal shows one figure on the upper platform. He's waiting for you." Sam exhaled, wiping water from his eyes. "Then let's not keep the devil lonely." He slipped from cover, sprinting through the roar of turbine wind. The propellers above turned the rain into knives of mist. Ahead, the hangar doors gaped open, spilling yellow light and the sound of muffled crying. Inside the scene was chaos cages welded from shipping crates, children wrapped in thin blankets, guards moving in precise, quiet lines. The air smelled of metal and disinfectant. Sam raised his pistol. Seattle PD on your knees. Half the men froze. The other half reached for weapons. Before they could fire, the drones above released their sonic bursts, a piercing whine that shattered the silence and every glass bulb in the hangar. Sparks fell like meteors. Riley's voice came again, signal confirmed, SWAT inbound in 2 minutes. Then, the loudspeaker crackled, smooth, venomous. 2 minutes is too late, Samuel. Pastor Gideon Lyle stepped into view on the catwalk above, one arm gripping the railing, the other holding Arya by her shoulder. Her face was pale, tear-streaked, but alive. "She's my salvation," Gideon shouted over the storm. "And your curse. Let her go," Sam yelled, aiming upward. "You can't wash blood with guilt," Gideon's laughter echoed like thunder. "You built this empire on my hands, and now you pretend to tear it down." Sam's finger trembled on the trigger. "You used God's name to sell children." "Faith sells better than fear," Gideon screamed, pushing Arya closer to the edge. A turbine groaned above its massive blade, creaking in the wind. Sam saw the beacon light blink red, his chance. He glanced at Riley's drone feed on the tablet clipped to his vest. "Drone 4, he whispered. "Target that catwalk brace, copy." The drone swooped through the rain, its LED blinking like a comet. A small charge dropped and detonated against the steel beam. The catwalk shuddered, sending Gideon stumbling. Arya slipped, screaming. Sam ran. He vaulted a crate, lunged across a flooded floor, and dove just as she fell, catching her midair. They hit the water hard, rolling through the shallow pool. Gideon roared above, gun flashing. Bullets tore through the puddles. Sam shielded Arya, sliding behind a generator. Riley's voice burst through static. SWAT entering from North Bay. Sam fired back once, one clean shot. The bullet shattered the railing beside Gideon. He staggered, lost balance, and tumbled backward into the turbine's shadow. The blades turned wind, screaming like judgment itself. For a breathless second, everything froze. Rain, firelight, and the hum of spinning giants filled the world. Then silence. Arya's small hand clutched Sam's soaked sleeve. "Is it over?" He looked at her chest, heaving eyes burning. It's over for him. Outside, police sirens and drone lights merged with the storm's dying roar. Riley appeared at the doorway, soaked but smiling. "We've got them all. Every kid. Every file." Sam pulled Arya close as she buried her face against him. Wind whipped through the open hangar, scattering papers, extinguishing the last of the flames. Overhead, the turbines kept turning, huge white halos spinning against the night. The wind sang through them, not like a machine, but like a choir finally freed. Dawn seeped over the bayou, gray and colorless. Smoke still rose from the hangar, coiling into the sky like the last prayer of a fallen saint. Floodlights flashed red and blue, painting the mud in alternating shades of accusation. Sam stood at the edge of the water, clothes, torn hair plastered to his face. Around him, SWAT officers guided shivering children into rescue trucks wrapped in blankets. Riley approached, tablet in hand, her expression unreadable. "They're safe," she said softly. "All of them. 32 kids total. Medicals on site." Sam nodded, silent. His hands shook as he wiped grime from his face. And Gideon gone. The current took him before they could recover the body. He didn't respond. His eyes followed the rising sun, pale behind the smoke. For the first time, there was no satisfaction, just exhaustion, heavy and deep. Riley hesitated, then turned the tablet toward him. "There's something you should see." On the cracked screen was a ledger, donor, names linked to Helios Relief. She scrolled slowly until the cursor stopped. Archer Renewables Holdings, Samuel A. Archer, 12,000 Infrastructure Sponsorship. Sam stared at his own name. The silence between them was louder than any siren. "It's all traceable," Riley said. They funneled funds through your subsidiaries. You built part of this without even knowing. He let out a breath that trembled. Maybe knowing was never the point. Maybe not asking was. Behind them, a rescued boy pointed toward the turbines still spinning above the marsh. Their blades moved slower now, whispering like ghosts. Riley placed a hand on his arm. "What will you do?" Sam looked at her eyes, hollow but steady. "What I should have done years ago." He stepped toward the nearest camera drone hovering above the wreckage. Its red light blinked, recording every word. "My name is Samuel Archer," he said, voice raw, "and this was built with my money. But today, it ends with my hands." For a long second, even the turbines seemed to stop. The choir of the wind had fallen silent, leaving only truth to echo across the water. The levee was quiet, except for the murmur of the river pushing against its banks. Dawn light spilled like melted gold across the flooded fields, soft and almost merciful. Sam stood on the embankment, coat, still torn hair, damp with fog. Reporters and rescue workers gathered nearby, their cameras blinking red in the mist. He faced them without notes, without a script. For years, he began, voice low, "I built towers that touched the clouds and called them progress. I believed numbers could wash away the noise of suffering." He paused, eyes drifting toward the rising sun. "But you can't build clean energy on dirty souls. You can't light a city if you refuse to see its shadows." The microphones trembled in the wind. Riley watched from the sidearms, crossed silent witness, to the unraveling of a man who had once owned half the skyline. "I funded Helios Relief," Sam continued. "I thought I was saving people. I never asked where the money went, never checked who it hurt. That makes me complicit." His jaw tightened. "And I'll spend the rest of my life undoing it." He lifted a small document folder from his coat pocket. "Effective today, Archer Renewables is establishing an independent survivor trust run by no board, no shareholders, only those who were failed by the system. Every cent of my profit will go there." The crowd murmured. A reporter called out, "Mr. Archer, do you expect forgiveness?" Sam looked at her for a long moment. Forgiveness isn't the goal. Truth is. He stepped down from the levee where Arya waited near a police truck wrapped in a blanket too big for her. She reached out, taking his hand. "Your pain wasn't your fault," he said softly. "But mine is, so let's both start over." The girl nodded, eyes reflecting the dawn, and as the first light touched the river, it turned the muddy water clear enough to see their reflections, broken, yes, but standing together. 3 months later, the courthouse smelled of paper and rain again. The banners from Helios were gone, replaced by evidence boards and rows of cameras. Every seat was filled, journalists, survivors, strangers who'd followed the story like scripture. State versus Gideon Lyle. The pastor's name echoed through the hall, though the man himself was absent, still missing, presumed drowned. His empire, however, stood on trial. Sam sat at the witness stand, a plain gray suit replacing his usual polish. Across the aisle, Arya sat beside ADA Noreen Baptiste, her hands folded, her eyes fixed on him. The prosecutor rose. "Mr. Archer, you claim responsibility for the financial channels that funded these operations." "I do," Sam said quietly. "Unknowingly, but yes. Then why come forward?" He hesitated only a moment. "Because silence built this faster than money ever could." The judge nodded slowly, pen tapping against her notes. The room held its breath. Noreen stood next. "Mr. Archer, in your opinion, what does justice mean for those children?" Sam looked toward Arya, her small figure framed by the morning light through stained glass. "Justice," he said, voice rough, "is when they can sleep without hearing engines in their dreams." A hush swept the courtroom. The judge struck her gavel once, sharp and clean. Motion carried. Full investigation authorized. Proceedings will continue under federal oversight. Applause wasn't allowed in court, but it rose anyway, soft like rain on glass. Arya smiled faintly. For the first time, Sam did too. The river ran calm again, its brown water turning silver under the afternoon sun. On the far bank stood a small wooden house roof patched with tin gardens sprouting wildflowers between cracks. It wasn't much, but it was theirs. Sam knelt beside the porch rail, hammering a loose plank back into place. His hands, once used for boardrooms and contracts, were rough, now scarred, but steady. Inside, Arya sat cross-legged on the floor, drawing with crayons. Her laughter drifted out through the open window, mixing with the sound of the river. Riley leaned against the fence, arms folded, watching them. "You traded skyscrapers for splinters," she teased. Sam smiled faintly. "Skyscrapers didn't echo like this place does." Riley nodded toward the mailbox, freshly painted blue. "The Survivor Trust's first school broke ground today. The kids are naming it after her." He looked toward the porch, where Arya now held up her drawing a crooked sun over a house by the water. "She already named it," Sam said softly. A breeze rolled through, warm and alive. The hum of turbines could still be heard miles away, faint but steady, like a memory that refused to vanish. Arya ran outside, barefoot, waving a paper airplane. It looped once and landed in the river. She frowned, watching it drift. Sam joined her. "Want to make another?" She shook her head. "It's okay, the river can keep it." He watched the tiny scrap float away, sunlight catching on the crayon lines. A sun, a blue house, two stick figures holding hands. Riley stepped back toward her car. "You did good, Archer. The city finally remembers you for something worth building." Sam looked at Arya as she turned to him, smiling, hair catching the gold of sunset. "I'm just keeping a promise," he said. The wind carried their laughter across the levee, and for the first time since the storm, the air didn't smell of rain, only of home. The cemetery sat on a hill overlooking the river, where the grass swayed like green fire beneath the late sunlight. Sam walked slowly along the gravel path, a single candle in his hand and a folded paper tucked inside his coat. He stopped before a weathered headstone. Eleanor Archer, 1954-2003. The letters were fading, but the memory wasn't. He knelt, brushing moss from the marble, and lit the candle. The small flame flickered against the wind, fragile but stubborn like everything that had survived. "I used to think you wanted me to build higher," he murmured. "But maybe you just wanted me to look closer." The paper in his pocket crinkled as he unfolded it. Arya's drawing, two stick figures, holding hands beside a blue river, a sun made of crooked gold. He placed it under the candle, the wax dripping onto the edges. "I found her mom," he whispered. "A girl you'd have loved. She taught me to stop fixing the world and start listening to it." Behind him, the wind rustled through the oak trees, sounding almost like a sigh. Footsteps approached softly, Arya carrying a small wildflower bouquet. "Riley said I should bring her these," she said, kneeling beside him. Sam smiled. She'd like that. She loved flowers that didn't wait for gardens. They placed the bouquet by the candle. The petals glowed amber in the light. Arya looked up. "Is she the reason you help people now?" Sam thought for a moment. "She's the reason I remember how." They sat in silence as the sun dipped low, painting the river in copper and glass. When the wind rose again, the flame bent but never went out. Arya whispered, "Do you think she can see us?" Sam's voice was steady. "If faith means believing in what you can't see, then yes, sweetheart. I do." And as the last light faded, the candle kept burning, a quiet promise, a bridge between what was lost and what had been found. Morning unfurled over the river like a clean page. Mist drifted between the reeds, turning sunlight into gold dust. The house by the water hummed with quiet life, toast popping from a worn toaster, the smell of coffee mingling with river air. Sam stood by the window, shirt sleeves rolled up, watching Arya struggle with the ribbon on her new school uniform. She looked smaller, yet somehow stronger, like the world finally fit her shoulders. "You'll be late, Professor?" she teased, grinning. He smiled. You'll be later if you don't tie that right. She rolled her eyes, tied the knot, then slung her backpack over one arm. On its zipper dangled a tiny wooden cross carved from a branch found near the old church. The scars on her wrist had faded to soft lines like stories rewritten instead of erased. Outside, a yellow bus honked twice. Arya ran to the door, then turned back. You'll be there right at the school opening. Wouldn't miss it, he said. She hugged him quickly and dashed out, her laughter trailing behind as the bus door closed. The road swallowed her in sunlight. Sam stood still for a long moment, the quiet stretching wide. Then a paper slid through the mail slot, an invitation embossed in silver. Keynote address, From Empire to Empathy, hosted by the Survivor Trust Foundation. He traced the words with his thumb. At the bottom, in neat handwriting, you taught us that saving lives starts with listening, R.T. Riley. He looked around the small house, the coffee mugs, the sketch taped to the fridge, the sound of the river brushing the shore, and exhaled slowly. The empire was gone. But something larger had taken its place, something that didn't need glass or steel to stand tall. Sam walked outside, the rising sun on his face, the world bright and unfinished before him. In the distance, the school bell rang, clear, hopeful, and for the first time he didn't hear thunder behind it. How did this story touch you? Share your feelings in the comments and give it a rating from 1 to 10. Remember to like, share, and subscribe, then tap the bell icon so you'll always stay updated. And don't forget, click on the end screen to watch more heartfelt videos waiting for you. See you soon.